Good morning, Julie Coher. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jason Paget?
I have been so deep in AI all weekend. I have not even come up for air.
Oh my
Here's a
goodness.
fun fact. So you said it's funny that I always have a black background and you always have a white background, right?
Yeah,
I said,
yeah.
yeah, good versus evil. Uh, However, if you've ever noticed, my black background is actually a sheet that I bought and pinned to my wall. And it had like creases all over it for the longest
Mm.
time. So I was complaining about it to our chief operating officer at CitizenAI, who I'm always doing things with, and I was like, I just am too lazy to take all those thumbtacks out and get it down and iron it. And he suggested I just iron it on the wall, and I did, and now it's nice. So I just sit there with an iron and ironed my wall.
Hilarious. I love that.
Is th- that's ingenuity right there. Like, too bad I didn't have a robot for it, but I did it.
The robots are coming, I'm sure.
Oh, they're
Yeah.
coming. So what have you been up to?
Work. I'm like, I don't know. Well, we had the Cars for Keeps fundraiser event on Thursday evening. Then we had the art museums gala on Friday evening, and there was a recycling day event yesterday. So worked really this week, but um, all good stuff. All good stuff.
You're everywhere.
Sometimes. Everywhere and nowhere. That's what it feels like. It feels like we're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Because I am very routine. I am like at home, unless there's extenuating circumstances. However, I don't you weren't at the Cars for Keeps event. It was really great. They had a comedian come out. It was a really good time.
And Cards for Keeps, talk a little bit about what they do.
They basically do a 0% interest and help people who are experiencing poverty, like be able to afford a car, but they also give them financial uh, budgeting knowledge with that too, right? So it's life changing for a lot of people. So they can actually afford a car. And from that, they get all this education behind budgeting and, making sure what percentage of your budget goes to what. And it's very life changing for people.
And Corey is such a good guy.
An incredibly good human.
I'm gonna have to get him on the other pod. So I have a new podcast with Oliver Belanger, the chief operating officer at Citizen AI. We're doing capacity overload AI for social work, and it's basically us talking to executive directors or anyone who's not just a fundraising arm of a nonprofit about what their mission and vision is, and then what struggles they're coming up against, and how technology and in particular AI might be able to overcome that. We just had the executive director from Gigi's Playhouse, which
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's a nonprofit it's actually worldwide, but there's a big one in Indianapolis, and they help families who have individuals with Down syndrome with educating and empowering individuals with Down syndrome. Absolutely crazy. I was like, I wasn't sure. So as a person in long-term recovery, I have like probably unresolved trauma that I'm 53 years old and I'm never going to resolve. And I don't really give a damn. But when I talk about recovery, sometimes I'll get choked up out of nowhere. This like weird stuff boils up. And I've learned to take a thumbtack with me when I do recovery talks because it's annoying. Like, especially to like students at Purdue or whatever, they're like, what the hell is this guy crying about? Right. It's
Mhm.
funny because I was listening to the background on Gigi's Playhouse and I was like, oh shit, this is like one other topic. I've always felt like people with Down syndrome really pull my heartstrings because no matter how bad life is, they are always smiling. They're
Always, yeah,
always happy.
yeah.
It's crazy. I made it through the interview without getting choked up, but like we're gonna go to one of their events this summer, I think. And it was just a lot of fun to talk to the guy. They're doing some
That's amazing.
really great work.
I love that, and you should definitely plug Corey in with one of those. I think he'd be a great, interview.
I do too. I
Yeah.
do too. I love Corey and I love Cars for Keeps. I think that's great. And I miss the Lafayette ecosystem, although we do have some probably potential first clients that are within that ecosystem in the nonprofit space that are doing social work.
Yeah. I'll talk to you about it off of the recording, but I did speak to somebody who I know had a really great experience with you, so
Oh, I love it. That's nice to hear. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I just do I don't wanna privacy stuff, right? I just wanna make sure I'll
No,
tell you off
that's
the air. Yeah.
I appreciate and respect that.
Mhm.
So, have you done anything with AI?
No, this has been well, not really, but I will say that I, like, have tried using Copilot a little bit more, and I am just not a fan because I'm looking for Copilot doesn't seem to, and maybe I'm misusing it, right? But it does not brainstorm with me the way I want it to. Like it is like it wants to organize my emails and whatever. And I'm like, no, help me like come up with an idea. And it's like, nah. So I find that interesting. I'm not sure what I mean, its purpose is what? Just to go through your emails and summarize that or I don't know. I don't know. Very interesting.
I will have to say that it's hard for me to admit when I'm wrong. But I was at an event with Brian Beck and Colin Stoffer the other day for ProXserve's open house that I saw Jim at, actually,
Mhm,
right? Jim was
mhm.
down here in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Brian corrected me. They're in Indianapolis, not Carmel. They're off 96th Street, which I consider, Carmel-ish, Carmel-esque, but we'll call it Indy since that's their address. I ran into Jim, and that was awesome. Jim Stone, the owner of the radio station that you call home. And then I went in and Colin is an AI consultant in the greater Lafayette area, and he did a presentation for the business people there on how to leverage Copilot. And I will say he has some impressive use cases for Copilot. I personally have always found it absolutely worthless, but when leveraged properly, it's coming along. I would put it that way.
Okay.
So you might reach out to Colin and talk to
Well,
him about it.
I know I had texted you to because I could not remember Colin's last name for the life of me. So that's good to know because that's just another reason to actually touch base with him. He had mentioned that his family also does something in like Delphi, and I had a question about that, but now I have double the reason to reach out to him.
Ask him about it.
Yeah,
You know, it's
absolutely.
he's if anybody can tell you how to leverage Copilot. Now, on the other hand, ChatGPT has like put the gloves on and is coming back against Anthropic because Image Gen 2.0, their new image release and new image model is insane. So, a few announcements for the AGI podcast. As of the time that this launches, we should have a website. It is agipodcast.ai. And we have been completely rebranded by ChatGPT. We're going to have
Oh.
a newsletter, and we're going to really lean into the Schools Out podcast as kind of the flagship podcast. But I wish I have this Mac that I haven't really figured out that well. Yeah, I wish I could share my screen because just the hero image for this particular Weekly Blitz like is a perfect picture of you beside me. There's no more football stuff, but I mean, it is just insane how good the image generator on
Hmm,
ChatGPT is now.
interesting.
Yeah, I have been using Claude and ChatGPT back and forth. So Claude is walking me through. I took Claude and used the um, functionality where you can use it in your web browser. And Claude is constructing us an entire HubSpot CRM landing page, newsletter, like all that, like all the stuff I would have to pay a developer to do. I'm using Claude and ChatGPT together because the aesthetics ChatGPT is good at, Claude is not. I had a
Hmm,
LinkedIn post where I showed like a comic that ChatGPT did, and then beside it, the same prompt in Claude, and it looked like a South Park cartoon. It's absolutely
that's funny.
hilarious. It's funny, but like so for the aesthetics, ChatGPT is amazing, but Claude and I keep hitting rate limits and having to go do other things like real work on the side because the podcast is kind of a hobby. But I just have it like running in the browser, and my Claude account will be like, okay, now paste this prompt over in the browser, and it's just building out. I mean, it's building page after page after page. A string for the data bytes, a string for the Schools Out podcast, a string for the Weekly Blitz, a string for the Vibe. It's just, and they will all have their own little URL that things can go to. This is stuff that there's no way unless we had somebody come forward and be like, "Hey, we want to sponsor your podcast," which we
Mhm.
don't currently have. If people would like and share the show, that would be very helpful. But we don't currently have the audience for something like that, so there is no way that any of this could get done. I spent a little bit of money on a web URL and like $9 a month to upgrade HubSpot so that it has the capacity, and all this is getting done that's like thousands of dollars worth of work by AI.
Hmm, that's interesting.
It's impressive. You have to admit it.
I mean, yeah, those are just tools that I still don't need yet. But yes, it is impressive, and I can see it is interesting because again, I think we've talked about it before. Like the tech world is the one that's going to be impacted first and fastest as far as what AI can do, because that's still stuff that I don't need yet, right? But that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's people that but it's not people not getting work because that's the thing about it is in some spaces it will be replacing human beings, but in other spaces it's just giving someone who wouldn't have the spend or the time capacity to do something the ability to do it.
Right.
It's democratizing creation.
Yeah, it's really interesting because again, kind of like so like, there are web developers who are going to feel an impact from that, right? Because it's going to not maybe not fully replace them, but I mean, could.
Yeah.
So, it's just going to or it's going to just pivot how they're doing it, you know what I mean? Like, well, and ultimately it could be a time saver for them and they could just develop more, because somebody like me, even though I maybe at some point down my life, road path, whatever, I need something like that. And maybe instead of me doing it myself, I can reach out to somebody who, like you, who's already done it. You just do this for me. I don't know.
I mean, it is. It's interesting because it's kind of like two different things right there. Like there's the people who would have paid for it who may now do it themselves or may expect it for less of a cost because they know that it can be done much more easily and in less hours. And that's one of the things that's a big conversation that I hear recently, which is consulting, law, website design. Like this whole charge by the hour thing is going to go away, and it's going to have to be a new model of charging by outcomes and by project because everyone
Mm,
knows if they hire let's just take it big and no everybody goes enterprise. Let's just say you hire a small consulting company, right? Like, and they want to do market research for you and things like that. Everyone knows that they're leveraging AI tools to help them do that, and that it does not take them the number of hours or probably a third at most the number of now they just have to go verify the research. They don't have to go do it. And so if they would have traditionally charged me 20 hours for a project and they come and try to charge me that same 20 hours, if I know anything about the AI landscape, I'm like, I don't want to call BS here. I don't think it took you 20 hours to do this. Like, well, so we're gonna have to shift to more of an outcome based. There's that side of things, and then there's the other side of things, which I mentioned earlier, which is like, okay, but what I'm doing right now is not taking work away from anyone because I would never have had the money, or at least currently, I don't have the money to hire someone to do it, so it just wouldn't have got done. So now
right,
you is getting done that would have not gotten done regardless of hiring or not hiring somebody.
right. Which is, it's a great and that's an example of how it's a great tool for somebody, but it is going to I can see how that will also pivot how entrepreneurs are maybe starting businesses, you know what I mean? It's going to and I think that is a benefit, and I don't think any of the conversation is, like, big and scary and, doomsday, but, it is interesting, it's very interesting. I'll have to just keep watching how that develops, you know?
Yeah. I think it's gonna keep getting more interesting. I would say, and I've said before, like, a lot of this stuff before the beginning of this year, I would not have tried. I just as somebody with no coding background, I don't think that you really could do it, and now it's becoming more and more possible. It's fun because Oliver he is a software engineer, so he he has been like, "Try Cowork, try the browser extension, try computer," like, start with understanding how the AI thing is doing stuff in still a white collar, no code way, before you just try to dive into Codex or Claude Code, which is like actually just having it write code and software for me. And I'm like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense because if I dive right into something like Claude Code where I cannot read the outputs of anything that it's doing, I'm like, okay, well, it almost works, but I'm not real sure why it doesn't work because I can't understand what it just did.
Yeah. Mm.
I
All of
know.
it is, you know.
It's too
Uh,
much.
to touch on something that we kind of talked about last week, I don't know if you saw, was it Maine? Janet Mills. Was
She
it Maine?
vetoed. Boom.
Yeah. I don't,
Didn't mean to
I
interrupt,
don't,
sorry, but I did just hear that and I was like, hell yes.
no. I don't know. I don't, with the same conversation we were having last week. Like, there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen around it that is different than the conversation that's currently happening. It's a whole messy world. And I think if we can find ways, it feels very much, kind of Cold War-ish, right? Like, oh, we just need to be ahead of everybody else. And that is not language that's going to work for everybody because, again, right, we need to have like an investment in it. So I think about the solar punk stuff that I had sent you. And I think if the conversation was more, oh, but look at all the good that we can use AI for and how we can use it to change things, you know what I mean? Like that more of a conversation, you might have more open reception to data centers and all of that stuff. But
I'm gonna put I'm just gonna say when it comes to AI in the classroom, when it comes to AI in business, when it comes to AI in jobs, I agree with you 250%. When it comes to building data centers, the conversation is pretty much like when we started paving roads. And if you don't want data centers, then you don't want paved roads. If you want to be in the Stone Ages in your state and have gravel roads that you're running horse and buggies on while everyone else is driving their Chevrolets across pavement, you go right ahead. But that's exactly where you're going to be if you resist any data center build out in your state.
well, I find that interesting because then I think the flip side of that coin is why don't we have high speed rails now? Like, this is something that we as a country are way behind on. And the advantages to a high speed rail is massive. And we're still in the stone. Why isn't that front and center? You know what I mean? Like, that's something that could also move us along. And we don't even like think about it.
I can't speak to that aside from the fact that California's tried and failed, but they've tried a lot of things and failed. I mean, I have heard and do believe that it is interesting that Wall Street is soon to not be the economic epicenter of the world. It is if it is not already, it will very soon be Silicon Valley.
I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I know a lot of things are in flux right now. That much I can understand, the as far as like Silicon Valley, Wall Street, I don't know enough to get into the weeds on it, but that's interesting also.
Yeah, I mean, that's kinda historically how I mean, for I don't know, hell, the Big Book was written and Bill Wilson was a stock speculator back in the 1940s, so at least 1940, I would say Wall Street has been kind of the economic epicenter of the United States, and with the trillions of dollars that are changing hands and coming out of Silicon Valley now, that shift appears to be happening.
So tell me, this is where this is why I hate just talking about money in general because it all feels made up. Because if Silicon Valley is bringing in or is worth trillions of dollars, but we are trillions of dollars in debt, how is that? Like, it blows my mind. There is no way that we supposedly bring in this much money, but then we also owe this much money, and there's no way to resolve it. It's beyond. I just hate money. I hate it.
Well, I do
It's
think
not.
you're bringing up something that's very different right now about this, which is anytime that we've had any kind of huge technological economic advancement, whether you're talking nuclear technology or you're talking fiber optics or any of the things that are the railways, the paving streets, like all those were government-led projects historically, and this is all private industry. So the private industry has no gun to their head or no reason to pay off the U.S. economic debt. Like, those are two separate things right now that historically they would not have been. If government was leading the charge in AI, they would be bringing in money from AI, or at least have the potential to do so, to pay off our debt. But
Right, but
Facebook,
instead we're giving them government contracts to give them more money.
well, only in defense. I'm
But
and,
still,
and
it's still, you know what I'm saying? That, but I hear what you're saying. But that's when we get into the weeds, and we probably shouldn't. When you get into the weeds of, most corporations right now have a lower tax rate than I do as an individual person, and that's a problem, because corporations, private entities that make trillions of dollars, should realistically be paying more than I am in taxes.
Historically, I would disagree with you. When it comes to AI, I completely agree with you. So historically, I would disagree with you in the sense that if it wasn't for those corporations, all the people who are paying taxes wouldn't have jobs, and I think they get devalued for that all the time. But the economy is propped up by big companies that provide jobs for the working class. Now, when it comes to AI, that is completely different. These AI companies are getting rid of jobs, and there will be less and less jobs, and we definitely have to figure out how that changes to tax these companies, and those conversations are happening. I mean, when a guy like me agrees with some of the things Bernie Sanders says, we're on the we're on the cusp of some definite change. And I don't know how all that's going to play out, but I do know that we are definitely looking at a future where those big companies could rule the world, not governments. And whether that happens or not, we have got to figure out how everyone shares, everyone who is at least contributing shares in the economic values of AI. And that goes down to the individual worker. Like, okay, so you bought me a Claude account and this and that, and now you expect me to do 5 times the work, which I can, and it's even more, a little bit more fun. But why is the company the only one getting 5 times more profit out of my work, and my hourly rate or my salary stays the same? Those are the kind of questions I've not heard talked about that really need to be talked about.
Yeah. Well, I also don't, I think it's interesting, and I don't understand why some of these AI companies aren't partnering with solar companies or nuclear power, because it can transform. Again, it's kind of that solar punk idea, right? So instead of the big scary, this is going to eat up our water, this is going to do all these things. Hey, let's talk and see how solar energy can feed a data center. And then you know what I mean? Like, it calms some of the anxiety around the water conversation, the energy, right? Because there's all this talk about, like, Indiana, and I'm sure other states, but being on the precipice of an energy crisis. And it's like, yeah, but we have potential answers. But for some reason, we don't want to explore that. I find that baffling to me. If we really truly have potential options like solar or nuclear or whatever, why are those conversations being shut out?
I can give you my read as a very someone who's not 200% educated on this. I think natural gas is really what these guys are looking at. A lot of these are trying, and a lot of the legislation says you have to provide your own power. And Elon's done a lot of providing his own power down, but he also, like, regulations is a big problem in nuclear. Over regulation is slows down nuclear. China puts up nuclear power plants left and right. We are so overregulated that it's at least 10 years from inception to launch of a nuclear power plant. And the AI industry does not have 10 years to wait for power from a nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
Elon built a lot of power down in Memphis, the Memphis area, when he built Colossus, but he also didn't follow all the regulations. It's not nuclear, but I mean, he did not follow local regulations, and he will just pay the price when he gets fined for doing that. But not everyone can afford to do that, and that's not a good way to go about things. I think regulation, holdbacks, we are a very legislative and over-regulated country that makes it very difficult for things like that. The flip side of that is that I'm not sure that they're not exploring solar and things like that, but solar only works when the sun's out. Wind only works when it's windy. These data centers can't go down. So my guess is that those are add-ons in the long term that they're exploring, but they're not answers right now.
Well, the sun's out all day, every day. Maybe not all day, but even when it's cloudy, you understand that the sun is out and it's producing energy and it stores it. I hear what you're saying. But then I also find it fascinating because then there's other parts in this country where we are not regulated. Like, don't get me started on the deregulation of radio. There's not regulation around AI right now, and we play catch up a lot. So it's interesting that in some areas we are, as you would say, overregulated, and other areas it's, do whatever, Hail Mary, and then we're trying to catch up and, we're behind the scenes on that. So,
Keep an eye on Texas because
yeah.
they're growing like crazy because of their lack of regulation and the fact that the billionaire taxes in California are going to lose more money for California than they would have made than they proposed to make. So the billionaires that are leaving, they're now not going to pay any taxes in California. Will be paying state taxes in Texas, but not be taxed on their assets and overtaxed like the Californians wanted to do.
Yeah, but let's watch when that grid goes down and they are effed because they have no power anywhere. You can't do anything if you don't have power.
We shall see.
We shall see.
We shall see. I mean, there's a lot of wind in Texas. That I would imagine that you will see build outs and innovation. When you bring smart people and people with big money, they'll figure out how to not lose power because their lives depend on it. And California is always going to have Silicon Valley, so they're not going to go under. But the rest of California has struggled with a lot of things over the years. But anyway, let's go back to good fun. So I went to the Mira Awards. TechPoint had their Mira Awards I got to go to for the first time on Friday. That was really nice at the Palladium in Carmel. That's like
Okay.
the technology awards. TechPoint is kind of the nonprofit tech incubator. Them all combined with the Central Indiana CIPS. I should know, but partnerships for they're basically trying to help build out the ecosystem in the state of Indiana, and they gave like the Maine Achievement Award to Mung Chiang, the leader of Purdue. He was there. He was down here in my neck of the woods. I got to hear him talk. I love Mung. I mean, he's done so much for Purdue. I honestly feel like Purdue is becoming the MIT of the Midwest, and having two kids as Purdue graduates and having spent as much time as I did in Lafayette, like Purdue is near and dear to my heart. So that was cool.
The Bears just picked up in the draft. He only spent 2 years at Purdue, but oh gosh, I can't remember his name, but he's had 2 years at Purdue. He was the freshman all-star of the year 2 years ago, like right before I moved here. But the Bears picked him up and he's been a Bears fan his whole life. So I'm like, all right, now I feel even more, go Purdue.
The two worlds coming together.
Coming together. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. The tech world. Did Nate take something home from I just saw something on LinkedIn. Oh, it's gonna
Nate
drive me
Smith
crazy. Yes.
last year, I believe he did,
Oh, okay.
but he was there this year.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I
did
ran
anything
into
else?
him. I ran into.
Uh,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just wondering if anything I didn't know if you wanted to share more from that conference.
It was nice because I got a tap on the shoulder, and it was Ryan Murray, who's been on the AGI podcast, as well as Tanika, who was on just yesterday. So the Central Indiana Partnership for Education, they have a symposium coming up May 12th, the AI Symposium, leaning into the shift, and I am actually on a closing panel there. So I've really been, I've really been I felt warm how welcomed I've been in a lot of the conversations around AI and education.
Good.
That's as a non-educator, but I'm someone who does care about and educates at like Walla and things like that. But I'm not a teacher. Let's not let's not make it more than it is. To be involved in those conversations, that's probably the when it comes to AI, K through 12 is probably where my most interest lies because I do think that those kids are the ones that are either going to have a lot of opportunity or they got a lot to deal with that may be a lot of struggle coming.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's changing and it's changing literally every day. So I don't know.
It is. It is. It's exciting. It's all so recursive self-improvement seems to be kind of happening. So AI is writing AI now, which means it, if what I've watched is true, if this was like how things start, like here's ChatGPT, here's technology for the years of or AI. It was kind of like up and down. There were winners and ChatGPT happened, and then all of a sudden it started kind of going like this, and then it started moving a little bit faster. Once AI starts improving AI, it will just go like this.
That makes
That's
sense.
yeah. That's like the takeoff. That's the singularity, whatever you want to call it. Like that's where all of a sudden all these systems just start doing things at faster than we can even really keep up with.
Yeah. And of
So
course, there's no regulation.
I mean, you have to look at companies like Anthropic and things like I mean, I have to say, and you know what's funny is I'm going to say it. Trump had to kowtow to them because they launched Mythos, and it was like such a huge model that now the White House is like, well, maybe you guys should come back and talk to us some more, and we'll figure something out, and we won't ban you from all government projects because it looks like you have like the most powerful model in the world, and we can't do without you. That is hilarious.
That is funny.
It is funny. And,
It is.
of course, Trump will spin it that way, it'll be that the woke people came around to seeing it his way, but honestly, that's not really what happened. What happened was that their models are so damn good that the United States Department of Defense can't overlook them or push them out, or they truly do become a national threat, not because of what they're doing, but because of what you did to them, more or less.
Right.
Right? I
Mm,
mean, you don't wanna
mm,
make an enemy out of the biggest guy on the block just because you felt like making an enemy and he didn't use the right color sidewalk chalk when he drew his thing.
mm. Yeah. Interesting. You're right. Yeah. Mm.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything else?
I don't I don't think so.
You see somebody took a shot at Trump again?
Supposedly, allegedly, yes.
Oh, now it's fake.
Well, I don't even know that that's what I saw this morning. I heard there was a shooting at the dinner, and somebody got, an officer got hit in the vest. So,
Yeah, Secret Service man got hit in the vest.
yeah. I have yet to see anybody word it as an alleged assassination attempt. I haven't seen that yet, but
Well, I probably watch that political stuff less than you do, and so
mm.
that was kind of what I gathered from it, but, you could be 100% right, like, that stuff
I don't know. I just that's so far, right? So it's gonna continue, things are gonna continue to roll out, and we'll see. I think it's a natural assumption. I'm just being careful on my end because that is not, what I've seen yet, but I have heard there was a shooting. I did understand that the vest worked, which is great, but
if there's one thing AI has done for me, it's taken me out of politics, which is kinda nice because I was getting a little overly into that before, and now I'm just like my daughter looked at me last night because I got a balloon for my wife, like, a little for Mother's Day, and she's like, "It's not Mother's Day." I'm like, "No, it's the little one on a stick that doesn't deflate, right?" And I said, "Helium prices are gonna go up because, actually, there's a helium shortage because of what's going on in Iran and China and the Strait of Hormuz, and it seems like actually helium is necessary for a lot of chip making and things like." And my daughter looks at me and goes, "Why are you such a nerd now?"
that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause that's all I really give a damn about anymore is how is politics as it affects, like, technology.
Well, and it does. And it does. We are all intertwined much more deeply than I think we fully understood before. So, and all of it, everything, every industry, all of it.
Alright, any last words from the, what was the, cyberpunk,
The solar punk.
yeah, the solar punk movement?
No, other than it gives me hope. It gives me hope. that there is a lot of good that could come from this if done, you know, I don't wanna say correctly because I don't, whatever, but if done differently than the conversation that's happening right now, I think there's a lot of good that could come.
I do not disagree, and talking to you always gives me hope for the week ahead.
Well, thank you, that's very kind.
It's true. You're just a ray of sunshine.
Well, thank you, Jason, I appreciate that.
Well, you have an awesome week, Julie.
You too! I'll talk to you next week.
All right.